as I start talking here in the beginning of this, keep in mind that it is going to build to a unique understanding of some things that you've already heard, but yet you don't realize it is going to interlock into what I explain here in only such a way that the Spirit can do it. Okay? And I'm going to do my best. We are going to look at this central theme here at its main biblical root of understanding, Ezekiel 17, the parable of the great eagle. Just quickly, we're not going to go into it right now, but just quickly, we will do it in this video. Quickly realize he has a tool known as a sickle. Sickle is not going to be any accident in this instance when it comes down to sick. And let's think about three movements that have ik on the back of them. Catholic, Satan ik, and Masan ik. Now if you take those three ickies and you were to just simply add the influence that got them that way, which was the serpent shape of the S, the crooked serpent, and you would form sick. Spirit equations for those that have ears and eyes to see. There you have the sickle. Okay? Now the sickle is a tool to crop, to harvest crops. And then that word crop is going to be seen in Ezekiel 17 with the parable, in which we see this maiden with the branch as symbolizing just that. So this is the rapture scenario in a sort of coded blueprint that's going to be fully understood by reading Ezekiel 17 and then looking for its synchronicity in Revelation chapter 17. And if you got eyes to see, you can see how chapter 17 got to that state, and then you'll realize what location is really being spoken about. Babylon, material, spiritual. Spiritual, ecclesiastical. Material, commercial. Give unto her double. So I want to talk about the red here a little bit, because it's so incredibly interesting here, because you want to think about the term sacred, you know? Sacred has sack red in it. Look right there. When I say sack, it's like you would sack a kingdom or something, right? Sack a fort, sack a castle. But then if you rearrange just these three words in a sense and then put the S over here, it's like AC's the red. Okay? All the information is still there. AC's the red for what they're going to try to institute and create. As you know, it's connected with Esau, Earth Pig, then related to Jesus Christ in a particular lineage that's quoted from the Bible. But sack the red, we have to realize at the same time it's revealing more information, not a part of the agenda that they're hoping to perpetuate, but the actuality of the repercussion of the agenda that eventuates. So sack the red. Now, if I was to simply take this entire word and make it an anagram for consistent information, watch what happens. You see that? Scarred. Now you could see that as scared or scarred. But when I'm seeing this, the highest form coming with scarred is connecting now to tear. Right? Mark of the beast. Think about tear and terror. Think about Monster Energy drink, and then think about those claw marks coming down. Now think about the claw marks and the symbol of what they're doing. They're tearing. Tearing creates scarring. all of these people that believe themselves to be a product either genetically or influenced by doctrine are all scarred. They are all teared, if you will. You know? And it's not an accident, because you've got to think about the color here, red, in semblance of what it really is, and it's scar let. That's let scar, people. Let scar equals tear up Jack. Anybody see that video that I did entitled Tear Up Jack? Now, scarlet is also crimson. Crimson equals take a bite out of crime. Why? Why does it mean that? Well, it's to produce the crime son. Crimson, crime son. Take a bite out of crime. Who did I show you was taking a bite out of crime? Where did I tell you that main crime was being symbolized from micro to macro with that apple? That crimson, scarlet, red colored apple. Out of the mouth of the eater shall come forth meat. Produce is agriculture, of which an apple is, which is called a morula, which is an embryo, to produce the crime son, the original sinner. Right there in crimson, perfectly descriptive of scarlet, which is let scar, which is to tear. And then now we know that the tears is the exact same thing that you see here, tears. And that is that infected wheat that is going to be thrown in the fire. Look at the column here and see that this is a sheep. At the same time, it's a lamb. Both of them are going to tell you the same thing after you know what I'm saying now. Have you ever heard sheep being led to the slaughter? Or have you ever heard the term sacrificial lamb? It's right there. What does Jesus Christ say to his disciples? Go unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The lost sheep of the house of Israel. So we see this sack the red sacred isn't really so sacred at all. It's scarred and quite possibly scared for its life. But you don't have to be. And you know why. It's Jesus Christ. Absolutely Jesus Christ. So if we look on the column here, we see this is the Jashyn column. Okay, one electrode here, DC electrode. The other DC electrode here, far side of the moon. There's the arc electricus, right? I'm trying to tell you that it ain't what you think is going to be sifted and lifted. You know what I mean? So if we see here, it says the column is white. Well, if you see right here, it says the column is red. Okay? But then, if you look right here, we see that this bride bearing technically the sexual act for the consummation out of wedlock is black, the Black Widow. So how does this column here fulfill itself simultaneously as white, black, and red in this instance? Well, if we were to look at the column here, we would realize that it is signifying the right eye location, which is being lulled to the left brain materially constrained location, symbolically the left hemisphere of the brain. This represents the far side of the moon. Now, if this would be the right eye location, we know that this is the darkened right eye of Horus. So how does this eye get darkened? Well, it's scarred by trauma. Trauma, scar, tearing, blood, red, wound. And there we see that this eye has been wounded and is now by default, in essence, darkened. So now you can imagine that the column seen as Jashin, symbolized with south, symbolized with white, symbolized with beauty, is also dark. The white represents the fair, and then that would represent that clay that became murray by the contact with the iron. So if these sons of God in Genesis 6 had caused these virgins to enter into this harlotry, these sons of God were being considered in relationship to this black iron representative of the beast nature. This is how the white, being scarred, being teared, has turned itself black, meaning this blackened right eye of black beauty. Now, it also fulfills why it's turned red in relationship to Horus's eye, in essence, his right eye being put out. And then now you would have her fulfilled perfectly as the black cube vessel that is representing that darkened right eye of the birth of Horus. We know that her feet are on the moon here due to Revelation chapter 12. There's the moon at the foundation. It says the moon was under her feet. This is the celestial boat. There's your eye symbolism, serpent on the front flag. These guys in these peculiar diverse colors are representing the constellation family of stars connected with Orion, the dog stars, Sirius, Orion, Betelgeuse, Procyon, and Sirius. This will fulfill the doubling of the heat of the sun, which will give us the timing for July. We will connect with the summer solstice and connect directly into the month of July for the sacrifice, which becomes this destructive act in which we see they are lifted up immediately after in symbol here. This will tell you that my interpretation that we saw with the goddess Columbia was exactly right on the timing, and we'll just have to come back for that. But if you were to just simply look at this picture of Horus, it's going to come together when you consider what's on his head. What's on his head is a symbolic representation of the crescent moon, but it's also simultaneously a representation of a celestial boat. And we see what is in this boat. It is a singular cell, or an embryo egg. And as you can see, baby in the basket, bun in the oven. What I find ironic is that these people running around calling everyone else the sheeple, in all actuality, are the lost sheep themselves, literally, and that they are being marked for sacrifice. and they are blinded and in darkness. They have been focused on the material conclusion as the reality of spiritual truth, when it becomes the illusion of the malformed reality of spiritual truth. Let's take a look here for a further explanation of what I just said. Now let's take the two columns. All right, let's take this location at this angle here as the right side hemisphere of a head. Now, this is going to fulfill with the left eye supposedly being on the light side, and then the right eye is on the dark side, completely encased in abject darkness. They are by default in so much darkness that they are looking up to this singular cell, this material goal of the destiny of the fallen prince. This cell turns into the prism, aka prison, for this being of light. That would be that material construct, the beast body he's hoping to enter. But the goal here is symbolized in Trinity fashion, in which, as I said, this represents a singular cell, electrical, chemical, and biological. And if you've seen some of my other videos before, then that would translate exactly what you see right here. Now, that would be the material manifestation of the singular cell. But then we have a supreme spiritual cell that would then form the other version of the triangle. Once they are overlaid, this represents the spirit identity persona of the individual being applied to the material matter. But what we see here in this instance is the material objective becomes the shining goal minus the spiritual truth. As you can see, this thing here is blocking the light, obstructing the view. And then you would have to remember in relationship to the cube on the forehead as that obstruction of the third eye. Now, as you would see representatively, how certain other ideologies could see this in representation of their own third eye. But in all reality, it's the third eye that is being obstructed with the light, being blocked with the material construct, which becomes the chief agenda and goal for the fallen prince. By default, it becomes the illusion of the goal, which never delivers the fruit of truth to those that follow after it. In other words, the asses that are pulling that cart, searching for that carrot. So here is your dark side, and here are those that are encased in it, that have, in essence, constrained themselves to a future terror of spilt blood, all by their own choices, or maybe not after this video. Maybe people will change. Maybe some are already doing it. Maybe people have eyes to see that when you look at the ancient depictions of the eagle, this is a nesher, you would see it as a vulture. But the rendering nesher in the Bible translates both to eagle and vulture. This is a representation of Nekbet. Her counterpart is Wadjet, the cobra. Together they make up the ladies of Upper and Lower Egypt, red and white, north and south. Notice what this vulture is lifting up. This becomes the caretaker of royal children. You see any red rings in the talons? No. You see double blue rings. this